All right, hello everyone. I see people starting to come into the session. I'm going to give us just a couple more seconds to get as many folks in as possible until that ticker stops going up. All right. And now we're already about 2 minutes in, so I'm going to kick us off here. Let me start by introducing myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Fredkin. I am a fractional marketer at Lettuce, who's hosting this conference. I run brand and content marketing there, and we're so excited to have you all here. Before we begin, I'm going to pass this over to Wes in just a moment. Wanted to go over just a little bit about our session format today. So each presentation is going to run for 40 minutes, and that gives you all just a 10-minute little window for a break and a stretch before our remaining content. So we're going to try to keep as on schedule as possible today. As our speaker presents, you'll see to your right, there's a chat and a Q&A function. Please use those. And certainly ask questions as they come to mind. Also, if you see questions in there that you're interested in, give it a +1 or a like so we can identify the most popular questions. We're going to hold them until the end, but we're going to try to save at least 5 minutes and open the floor for Q&A to Wes, and I'll read through those questions to guide us through that part. So I hope that's all clear. And now, without further delay, it is my honor to kick off our breakout sessions and welcome you to your intellectual headshot. Codify your IP to attract dream clients. Our speaker is Wes Wheelis, and he brings a fascinating combination of expertise from both elite consulting and tech. After starting his career at the Boston Consulting Group, he moved to a series of product management roles at Expedia, where he also served as an instructor for Expedia's Product Academy. He later developed premium courses for Reforge, working with tech's brightest operators and executives. Today, as founder of Develop My IP, he helps independent consultants find their niche and transform their expertise into intellectual assets. He has degrees for both Wharton and Kellogg and a daily newsletter that has become required reading for solos. He is uniquely qualified to help us package our expertise. Please welcome Wes Wheelis.
Thanks, Kim. I really appreciate that nice intro. I just want to say thank you also to Lisa and Gabrielle from the Lettuce team, not just for inviting me here today, but also for putting on this summit all together. I think it's a really great couple of days of content. And selfishly, I'm excited to go early in the program so I can watch all the rest of the sessions with a clear mind. So super happy to be here. Also wanted to acknowledge that we have, at least at the moment, just over 100 people that did not run away from a session that was about IP. So really appreciate that. Take it from someone who named their business Develop My IP. I have seen a lot of people kind of run in the other direction. And maybe that's a good place to start. When we think about intellectual property as an independent consultant, your mind might go to, oh, you're talking about like getting my ideas down on paper, licensing them. You're asking me to write a course or maybe a book, or do I need an IP attorney? You can see how like very quickly things get overwhelming, and no wonder we try to like kind of put this off for another day. But when I think about intellectual property, I think of a much more gentle definition, and it's just about your unique lens on your domain. And so if I could offer maybe a different title for today, which wouldn't have fit in all the marketing copy, but today we're just going to be talking about translating your unique expertise into shareable visual assets that attract dream clients. So hopefully that's a bit more palatable for you. And let's start with that last piece about attracting dream clients. And let's think about where we typically get our clients as consultants. I teased this yesterday on LinkedIn, but generally when we start out as consultants, we get our first clients from our warm network. It's a really nice bridge into self-employment to tap into that network and get your first client. But whether that's 3 months or a year, at some point that starts to tap out. And so you start to rely on a different source, which typically is word of mouth referrals. And this is either friends of your warm network or people in the network of the clients that you finish engagements with. These are great as well, but these tend to cap out just the same, and also can be pretty unpredictable. So pretty quickly in your solo career, you start hitting what I call the social plateau. And it's a nice run while you have it, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I need to find clients somewhere else. And so where did those clients come from? Well, I like to call them just simply they're strangers, right? These are people that you don't know. This is people that sorry, just one second. The people that you don't know, you've probably never heard of their company before, but we need those need those strangers to build out a pipeline and run a sustainable business. So to attract them, well, you could go out and run a cold DM game. I'll tell you, that's not my cup of tea. I prefer to attract them using something else. And so I started to think about, what about other professions and how do they go out and get work? So called this the intellectual headshot. So I started thinking about actors. They have headshots that when they're looking for work, they can send out headshots and they go in for an audition. And with those two things, they're able to give a really good picture of the expertise that they would bring to a project. Similarly, athletes, have tape and they have stats and they can go for a tryout. Very clearly demonstrate what they could bring to a team. So when you think about, well, what do consultants have? We have we have a LinkedIn page and maybe a website and perhaps a sales call. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that no one looks beyond my LinkedIn page like after the header. Maybe they go down to recommendations or maybe just glance at my background, but it's not like a deep dive of reading my whole page. I'll tell you, people that book calls with me probably haven't read my whole website. And so if we leave everything to the sales call, that conversation can be really kind of frantic too. So these aren't really great tools for us to communicate our expertise. But when you take a step back, think about what is it that we have that we want to transfer, right? It's our insights. And so I thought maybe we could leverage our actor friends and say, well, what if we, instead of like a headshot, what if we created an intellectual headshot? And that is in my definition, is just a set of unique insights synthesized into a visual shareable point of view. So this often looks like a framework or a visual representation of a mental model or a tool. I'll give you some examples here in a bit, but I actually already gave you one today. So this I would call an intellectual headshot of mine of how I think about client acquisition. And it's something that hopefully was able to resonate with you very quickly. And if I asked you about it 2 hours from now, you could probably remember what this looked like and you probably attribute it to me. So you can see kind of just the quick power of resonance that something like a visual asset can have. So with that in mind, let's redefine IP just for today and say it's not about intellectual property. This other IP is actually an insights portfolio. And I want to thank my friend Brad Didrikson, who I told him I was struggling with people running away from IP. And he was like, why not just call it an insights portfolio? And I think that's perfect for today, because by insights portfolio, all I mean is a collection of your intellectual headshots. So that's what we're going to walk through today. First, I'm going to give you kind of my view on why IP is so important for us soloists. Talk about the cascading benefits of bringing that into the marketing and sales process. Then we'll get tactical and I'll show you 6 different types of headshots that you can create for yourself and go through one of them specifically and step by step on how you can build it for yourself and your domain. And then we'll end talking about how you can get these out into the market. Kim did a good job of introducing me. I'm not going to go through all this again, but I just wanted, you're probably wondering, who am I to be talking about this? This is what I do with clients, specifically solo consultants. I help you find your niche that matches your expertise and then extract IP and put that together so you can attract and serve that niche. So in layman's terms, that just means I help you bottle your secret sauce. And I've been doing this for a while, both in corporate and as a solo consultant, and then now as a coach for other solo consultants. One of the experiences here I want to double click on is my time at Reforge, which really kind of earned my stripes in terms of IP development. I think it'd be helpful background. If you come from a product or tech background, you might have heard of Reforge. It was an ed tech startup. It's still around. What we were doing at that time was building premium courses for the tech community, kind of in a masterclass style. So we would retain executives from big tech firms and prominent startups that would then get sat with someone like me, and I would interview them for a few hours a week over the course of a few months, and we would create premium courses that we sold as part of a subscription, kind of $2,000 for an annual subscription per person. So premium courses on things like product strategy and growth marketing, et cetera. And when I zoom out of what we were creating there, it really was, I mean, it was a detailed course and it was written content, video, and also live content. But really what we were creating was, it was a sum of 8 what I'll call now intellectual headshots. So it was 8 tentpole novel frameworks on a specific topic. That was the structure of our courses. And I'll give you an example. This is one that the last course I did with Reforge was a course about managing engineering teams. I worked with a man named Nick Caldwell, who at that time was at Twitter. He's moved on to be the chief product officer at Peloton now. But we spent a lot of time talking about his 2 decades of leading product and engineering teams. And through those conversations, we're able to arrive at a framework, one of many, but this framework that you see on the bottom right here is about, we called it the team health engine, and what are the things that need to be in place for a healthy team. After a layoff in 2022, I started doing this independently. And so I had tech companies coming to me that were familiar with the kind of content we were putting out at Reforge. And this one in particular, Persephone, is a carbon accounting enterprise software that they were like, we want a Reforge type course based on the knowledge of our executive. This was Christina, who used to work at the SEC and had all this deep institutional knowledge about carbon disclosure and helped write the regulation that is coming into effect. But they're like, we can't keep sending Christina out on sales calls. We need to be able to document her expertise in a way that can educate the market. So that's what I helped them with. And just one last example, I'll come back to this one later, but here's Ethan Smith, who runs an SEO agency, still having trouble communicating even after decades in the market, being able to communicate the ROI that you can get on SEO investment. We created some assets that he could use to tell that story. I decided to pivot into helping solo consultants do the same thing, and I'll tell you why. As solo consultants, we come in out on our own with a bunch of experience, right? We have, again, a decade or 2 of corporate experience. We think we can, I'd say, okay, I did 10 years at Microsoft. That should allow me to go behind some client work. And based on that, I'll have more experience, which will lead to more client work. And this volleys back and forth quite a bit. That sounds nice, but I think if you go on one sales call, you realize that's actually not what they're looking for. The experience will get you in the door, but what the client is really looking for is your insights. And the difference here between experience and insights is experience is probably what's listed on your resume. Like, I worked here, I did this project, I created this much value. The insights is the aggregate of what you've learned along the way and how you've internalized that experience. All the pitfalls that you see that other people don't, the conclusions that you make about the problems in your domain. These are the insights that clients are after because it allows you to go in and kind of see around corners for them. I like to call this like your X-ray glasses. Like, this is the things that you see that the client is looking for. Now, you can get consulting work just on rattling off a bunch of insights, but it's not necessarily the most structured approach. So let me tell you what this looks like. And I'll use myself as an example here when I started out on my own. So you could say my experience was that I built masterclass type courses with tech executives at Reforge. So then a client comes in and says, I want to build a similar course and I'm having like to solve whatever problem. And so I can quickly start rattling off insights, right? Like, okay, it's going to take me, like, can the executive commit to 3 hours a week? That's what it's going to take as a minimum. Might drop something like, oh, and executives don't know what's unique versus common knowledge, and I can help give the lens on that. I can tell you once we get to a durable framework, it could give you 6 months of thought leadership content. Might even tell you that, a course isn't always the best path to monetization. So yeah, I can rattle these off. I probably already confused you just rattling them off right now. But I'll tell you that this is kind of how sales calls go if you come in unstructured. And some clients will love it and it'll really activate them. But others might be understandably overwhelmed or might just make them dizzy, right? And I think that this is an important point to stop and remember that as consultants, our clients are coming to us in some sort of pain. Sometimes in distress even, and also in like this vulnerable state. Like, they realize that they have a problem that they can't solve internally. And so we want to be careful not to use the time that we have with them, particularly the first contact, to just pummel them with insights when really we need to be listening and kind of comforting a bit about, okay, well, understand the pain that you're going through, and maybe I can be a bit more structured in how I put across my insights. So this all then leads to, okay, I think that there is a better way. So like, what if we can structure our insights into something like an intellectual headshot, a piece of IP that can transfer that knowledge and demonstrate your expertise without you having to make it all about you and you just feeling the need to just to prove yourself right in the moment. So let me give you what my first headshot looked like. And you see, I'm a bit embarrassed to share this because I wouldn't put this out today. I feel like it's pretty dense and wordy, and I'll show you examples later that are much more crisp. If you zoom in, you could see even that I was still using my Gmail address, so you can see this is a very early artifact. But going into, this was from my first proposal, and going into this proposal, it was a warm inbound, but we were still going through the proposal process. We were already hitting a wall with budget, and kind of some rates that they had thrown out at the beginning were like well below what I could accept. So I somehow just kind of knew that I needed to walk in with something that demonstrated that I had very unique expertise in this space. And so I decided to just say, okay, well, let me just put my process out there and show that I've thought through this, I've done this a lot, and I can even call out some pitfalls. And then I thought it was kind of cute to put a visual analogy of here, of like, you need to spend a lot of time mining these insights out of people's minds and then spend time refining them into these diamonds. And then at that point, then you can put it into packaging like a course and monetize it. So I put that in the first slide of my proposal, and let me tell you about what returned, and this will take us into the benefits here. And I want to say that I didn't realize that all this was happening at the time. This was only under reflection that I realized that this is what this activated. But let me walk you through what happened. So when I walk in with this slide, and I sent it to them a couple of days before, so they had time to read it and digest it. At first, it focused the conversation. So we had left the conversation butting heads about price already. But this, when we walked in, we were now talking about process and then all the insights that I had about the process. And in that, then it just naturally started to demonstrate, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He has some authority in this space. This then, just being laid out like this, it also provided visibility into a solution. Like, yes, they knew they wanted to build a course, but now they knew the steps that I would take to get there. By laying that out, then it accelerated them having trust that I could do this, so they weren't wondering if I could do the job or not. So then all that combined actually shortened the sales cycle. Like, they were already down the path with me of, okay, he can come in and do this, no problem. And so I guess we just need to figure out terms. And so then that acceleration then led me to a bit of leverage to be able to ask for the rates that I wanted, or at least find a reasonable compromise. So pretty amazing what all that happened, but it didn't stop there. That was just in the sales process. But you think you go one step forward, and when I showed up on day one and gave them a project plan, they weren't surprised to see this structured in 3 milestones that matched the proposal, the slide I had in the proposal, and also it provided a finish line. So we all knew where we were headed and when we were going to get there. Now, if you look at all this, and I know that this in itself is a dense slide, but you think about, in effect, that one headshot structured and sold a 5-figure engagement, which is kind of wild to think about. And I certainly didn't know that's what was happening at the time, but pretty crazy. Now, this I told you was a warm inbound, and so I brought this in the proposal in the sales stage, but we're talking about this session being about attracting dream clients, you can build these kinds of assets and use them to market yourself and draw people in based on something like this that you can put out. People can identify with your framework or your visual, and that in itself can prompt the meeting, and then you can start that cascade. So my question to you is, if a single visual can do all this, wouldn't you find the time to create it? So with all that said, let's get tactical. So I'm going to share 6 different types of headshots, and I'm going to show examples of each one. This is not that you need to go out and create each one of these. This is more for ideas that have been stuck in your head or conversations that you find yourself on repeat over and over with new clients. Think about if some of these formats might be a good way to represent them. And so the 6 of them here are a 2x2, a spectrum, an assessment, a time series, a loop, and a process. Again, this is not homework to go and create all these. These are just suggestions. And I'll walk through some examples. So the first 2 by 2. And I'm seeing some questions about, will the slides be shared? Yes, you'll get slides at the link that I put up that you see in the sticky there. So you can screenshot these all you want, but also I'll put these out on that side as well. I thought it'd be great to start with BCG's growth share matrix, and it's not just because I used to work there. I think that this is one of those iconic intellectual assets for consultants, and probably the original link for consultants and 2 by 2s. We don't need to go into details of what this represents. At a high level, it's something that companies can start to classify their business lines and decide where they should invest and divest. But you can see how simple it is, right? There's a lot of expertise that lies underneath something like this. But the point is to get to something that is just instantly digestible and applicable to someone's context. I think it's also worth mentioning that the BCG probably sold, I would guess, literally hundreds of millions of dollars of consulting services on the back of this asset over the decades that it's been out. And so it just shows you the power that certainly big firms see in creating this kind of IP, and it's something that we can do for ourselves as well if we just make time for it. Obviously, just as flashy as my stab at a 2 by 2 that I put out a year ago. This was one that I put when I first started helping people with their positioning. There was these two conversations going on about, should I be a generalist or a specialist, and oh, should I sell productized services or customized services? In my mind, those conversations need to be happening together. And so that seemed ripe for a 2 by 2, which I put out and published in my newsletter. And sure enough, within a couple of weeks, I'm getting consults booked and people are walking in saying, oh, I'm stuck in this spaghetti thrower corner and I feel like I need to get out of it. So you can see how sticky these things can be just kind of naturally. Here's a spectrum. This is one where I realized people were having some question marks about how they show up as soloists. And so I said, well, let me just put some terms to this. So in my mind, I thought on one end of the spectrum, there's a contractor who's like a full-time employee at a client for a fixed term. And then at the other end, there's an advisor who's definitely not an employee. They're just called for strategic, urgent questions. And then there's some in the middle. So I put this out, and an interesting anecdote on this one was I put this out sometime last summer, and then a few months later, someone booked a call. And the first thing he said to me was, your helper persona framework stuck in my mind for a month while I was on my honeymoon. I need you to help me to get from fixer to advisor. And I was here just kind of stunned because not only had he remembered the framework on his honeymoon, no less, but then he came in to me using my language and essentially carved out like a coaching arrangement between us. And sure enough, I then gave him a price and we started the next Monday. So you can see that these things really do turn into revenue if they stick in people's minds. Won't go too deep on this, but an assessment can be a really good way to deploy your point of view on something. This one was one that kept coming up about, with the ups and downs of the solo path, like, is self-employment actually a good fit? So I just thought, okay, well, based on my own experience and what I'm hearing from clients, then these are 5 factors that I think would give us a good signal about whether or not self-employment is a good fit. And of course, underneath this, there's like reflection questions and whatnot. But this can be a powerful type of format to have people assess themselves and then even get to a point of, okay, well, these are like yellow and red. Maybe I should like initiate some actions on a few of these. I'll show you this one again, a time series, and we'll double click into this one. But a time series, I think, is really powerful. As a soloist in your domain, you've seen the same problem happen over and over again. So I'm sure that you can write and create an arc of what typically happens. And from someone who's receiving that, they can then identify themselves on this time chart and see what's coming next. And it's a really powerful way to get people to see the problem the way that you do. And potentially even take action on it. We'll come back to it. Reforge was huge on loops. I couldn't get away with not putting this in there. And I've walked you through this one. Maybe I didn't actually close this loop, but the idea being like, yeah, structure your insights into IP. IP leads to more client work leads to more experience, and this loop continues. This is one where it's great if you see a lot of different activities with cause and effect, and particularly compound growth. This would be a really great one to think about applying to your context. And then the last one, of course, you already saw this is a process. I think maybe everyone already has a slide of a visual representation of their process. This is one that could be very easy as a starting point for you to put together. And think of a visual analogy. These are really sticky things that work. You can even use ChatGPT to say, I'm looking for a visual analogy of the process that I take people through, and it could help you come up with something like this. If we had more time and we had like a 201 on intellectual headshots, I would go deeper into this, but not all formats are equal. There are some better than others for certain uses. Maybe some highlights here is that like a 2x2 is really great at you identifying yourself against a couple factors, but it's maybe not great about what's the next action. On the other side of the scale, a process slide is great for demonstrating what your solution is, but it doesn't really help with having people identify with a problem. So you just want to be aware of what these things are helpful for. But remember, like this is, you want like a mix and match of these different headshots. You're looking for, I put 6 light bulbs here. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 6, maybe it's more than that. But these are things that you can build up over time, and they can be a lot of different, they don't all have to look alike. In fact, they probably won't. So I promised a step-by-step for you to be able to create at least one of these. I think it's really powerful to have a time series in your portfolio. And let me go back to, and we'll get into the step-by-step and how you can create this, but I'll set the stage with this example that I glossed over. Ethan, again, one of the, probably the top 5 world's experts in SEO, still said time and time again, he struggled to communicate with clients about the return on SEO, and he could talk about it over and over again, but people just weren't getting it. And so we spent some time and finally got to a view that looked like this, which again, I won't go into the details about SEO programs, but you can see, even without any context, in 2 seconds that this is, okay, you're demonstrating that there's clear ROI if I'm patient for 2 years. And as long as I follow Ethan's or Graphite's program in these 5 phases, right? So this is something that became very compelling. He used it we put it in the course that we were creating together, but we also, he led webinars based on this framework. He put this in client presentations. He took this to business schools. Like this one artifact can really have a really long legs. So how do you create this for yourself? That curve is common in a lot of situations, as I'm sure you know. So let's say a lot of us serve early stage companies, right? And so, there's a pretty set path of what the stages of those companies are. So you could lay that out. That line could represent revenue. It could represent headcount or users. You can start just laying on your observations of what the growing pains in your domain at each of those stages are. So that becomes your point of view of what happens, let's say, in a people strategy. Series A is when it really falls apart if you don't do X, Y, Z. So if you have that laid out, then you can start to highlight where the critical time is. And typically that overlaps when you're able to help them, right? If that curve didn't resonate, maybe this is like a typical bell curve of technology adoption. Maybe that speaks better to you. This one is one I worked with a client last month who was a fractional CMO for subscription companies. And he said, I see this all the time. There's like a huge spike in growth, and then it plateaus, and then it declines as people drop off if the company isn't on it. And sure enough, where his specialty was helping people in that plateau period. So you can think of a CEO of a subscription company then seeing it in this way. One, they get to see the context, right? There's 4 different phases that they can expect. They're instantly like, okay, well, I'm in the hypergrowth phase. I now see the trajectory of where this is going. This guy is like predicting my future. Okay, and I see now that I need to take action right here, and this consultant can help me with it. So hopefully this spurs some thoughts about how you can create something like this for yourself. I will say I put these in here, and again, these will be in the slides at the site that I posted. But one thing I really want to call out here is that before you go down the path of building IP, and that's a time series or any of the other ones that I showed you, you need to find a niche first, because if you try to create IP before you're specialized, you're going to end up with very generic IP, and it's just not going to gain any traction. I mean, think about this last one I just showed you, right? Like this curve is very specific to subscription companies, and it creates that aha moment of, I'm here, I'm gonna end up there if I don't do something. Like this would fall flat for any other people, and that's fine. What you're looking for is someone who connects deeply with what you're putting in front of them. So really, just if you walk away with one thing, it's niche first, IP second, and that's the flow of what I take my clients through as well. If you have that, and we're going to get close to the wrapping here. So this is, if you have a time series and maybe you have a process slide as well, this becomes the start of your insights portfolio, and you can continue to build this out over time. Everything that I showed you of the ones that I built over the course of a year as they became relevant to the conversations that I was having. So don't think that you need to carve out like 3 weeks to just put together assets. This is something you should do over time, and enlist help if you need it. So the last thing, and then we'll close on this is not something to build and sit on the shelf or shove in the back of a capabilities deck or a proposal. Like this, remember, as you're building it, is a marketing tool and a sales tool. And you need to use it as such, then you need to get it out into the market. And so just some ideas to get that out. One is, don't be precious. Remember, you're building this to draw in consulting services. So you don't want to gate a ton of this for clients only. Like there might be a couple of things that you're like, okay, this is really what I want to save that's just for paying clients. But remember, these are marketing assets. The point is to share them. And I would suggest sharing them repeatedly. If you're going to put them on LinkedIn, which I think you should, do it repeatedly. I think people often will say, oh, cool framework, and then keep scrolling. Hit them over and over again so that they have time to internalize it and also attach you to it, as opposed to just thinking, cool framework, I don't remember who wrote it. Don't stop at LinkedIn. If you have a durable framework, if you follow some of these formats, you can build a webinar out of it. You can go on several podcasts and go talk about it. Like these things can be, they travel very well. And so don't be afraid to take these on the road. The question comes up about protection. I am not an IP attorney. My next slide has the name of one, which I recommend you talk to her if you're concerned about IP protection. I'm of the mind of, if I went down the route of copywriting every framework that I put together, I probably wouldn't have time for much else, and I'd probably be broke. It's not a cheap process, and it's time intensive. And so my suggestion is, put these out. The market and your audience will tell you which ones are really resonant. And as you notice that they're becoming a major part of your business methodology, at that point, then go reach out to an IP attorney and talk about protection. And then the last thing I'll mention is these things can make a really great outline for books and courses once you want to publish officially. So I think I saved some time for Q&A. As Kim is getting those set up, I just want to talk about some of the takeaways that you'll find at this site. So you will have the slides from today. These were all split out with like animations and stuff. So I'll give you something on that site that you can download. Wanted to also point you to a colleague of mine. He's Liam Curley, is someone who's based in the UK, is another guy who pulls expertise out of people's minds and helps monetize it. If you're looking for inspiration from a design perspective, he created a starter kit of 75 visual frameworks for consultants that you can just download and customize for your own purposes. So if you think that that's your hurdle to get over, then there's a product that you can reach out to there. And then Erin Austin is the incredible IP attorney who she does a lot of LinkedIn webinars, has a podcast. If you're starting to think about IP protection, then I would suggest reaching out to her. There's a lot of ways you can work with me. You can read about that on the site. But again, I focus mainly on helping people find their niche and then building IP to support that. And then there's ways to stay in touch. The best way is sign up for my daily, I call it a micro email. It's a 1-minute read every day. It is where I put out all my original frameworks first, and everything else that has to do with monetizing your corporate expertise. So, all right, Kim, I think I'm a minute over where I thought I was going to be, but ready to take some questions and a sip of water.
You did great. I think we would all take as much of your time as you would give us after that. So no worries at all. So yes, thank you for the insights. A couple things for the group before we get into Q&A. So the idea of this is, this is just the start. And what we want to do is keep the momentum going, keep using and applying these tools to grow our business. So as Wes mentioned, he's offering 10% off one-on-one coaching sprints. I'm going to try to pull up that offer now. Give me 1 second. And then also at the visit developmyip.com/lettuce, that's where you can download all of his tools. We have a couple other offers I'm going to pull up for you guys right now. Let's see if this works the way I want it to. This is my first attempt. Oh, good. Okay. You can see Wes's offer here. I'm going to add a couple more to the pot. Let's see. Lettuce is also doing offer for you guys today, and we'll see if we can get them all at once here. With the code SOLOVIP, if you're interested in becoming a Lettuce customer, we're offering a free month off of our monthly fees, as well as if you are still scrambling to get those 2024 taxes in, and we can help you with that as well, complimentary. So a big offer there from Lettuce. And then the last one, and this is in the spirit of keeping the momentum going, after the Solo Summit, I'm going to add this in. We are going to be starting what we are calling the Solo Challenge. So on March 3rd, we're going to be starting, we're sending the group daily tasks, templates, tools, guides, everything you need to start putting the content from the summit into action. As a register for the summit, you're going to start to get emails for it. You can participate if you like, but just know that that's coming as a way to get everybody some group accountability. Let's do it together and to put all of these amazing insights into action. For the Q&A, Wes, I think most of the questions you actually covered in the last part. There was a lot about how do I put my IP out there versus keeping it for my engagements. A couple other questions that came in. Let's start with this one. It says, for your sample headshot, what else can you use besides experience in the industry as value? Some people fall into solopreneurship because of changes in the market or layoffs, and they don't maybe have 10, 15, 20 years of experience behind them.
Yeah, no, this is a good one. I think I would, even if you're in the camp of you have maybe 1 to 5 years, I would encourage you to sit back and think about the through lines of the work that you've done so far. Are there common activities that you really excelled at that you now see like there's a certain way to do those things? Like that can be a starting point for these kinds of headshots that could be helpful to clients. You're really just trying to visualize your thought process and your point of view. So anywhere you can start is fantastic. If you're feeling like you're really at square one and you don't have anything to go on, I think the other thing that you can do is do research. Like you can look at different types of case studies and then try to synthesize your point of view across many of them. So that's something that you can do that doesn't fall back on your own experience, but maybe how you're internalizing things that you're reading about in the market. That can also provide a window into how you would solve a problem for other people. And the last thing I'll mention on this one is, and this goes for people of any tenure, think back about one of the things I ask my clients is, what's something that you had in corporate? What's something that you in if your time in corporate, like there was something that you wanted to do a certain way, but you kept getting dismissed or saying that wasn't the right way to do it, or some people just like didn't see the way that you were seeing the problem. Those are the ones that are really ripe points of view to get on paper and start sharing. And now that you're out on your own, you don't have anyone telling you no. So hopefully that's helpful. Some to say.
Okay, so we are actually out of time. I'm going to sneak in one more because there's some love for it. Maybe we can answer it quickly. It's a very sort of practical question, which is, do you have any particularly helpful ChatGPT prompts that will help you building some of these frameworks?
Okay, yeah, I see that one. Yeah, I do. I'm going to point you to the archive of my newsletter, and there's a few that are titled an AI prompt for, and you can look at those there. There's one particularly around identifying your zone of genius, so like what really lights you up, and this can help you as you're looking to find your niche. Also one that will help you look for ICPs, and then I believe there's also one on trying to triangulate a point of view. Yeah, if I think of the exact link, I'll put it on that same site. But yes, I think ChatGPT can be an incredible resource here to really kind of help you break out of your own silo and blinders and help with the creativity aspect. So great question.
All right, great, guys. Remember, developmyip.com/lettuce. That's where you're going to find all of these amazing tools Wes is referencing. This is going to be on demand as well, so you can rewatch it after the event. And thank you all so much for joining us today, and I hope to see you in later sessions. Thank you, Wes.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it, guys.